What, is only one person in this video allowed to wear a ridiculous looking hat? Can I not wear my fez? No? Okay, fine. Welcome to the Chamber of the Wraith! My name is Brian, and today we're going to be looking at the Razor Rim Wonder, Kung Lao. This guy's got a lot of interesting abilities, and fun fact, I'm pretty sure he has the most 2-slot abilities in the game at, I kid you not, 5! Half of his friggin' repertoire is literally half his ability repertoire is 2 slots. It's ridiculous. So I had to literally put every single variation that I made, none of the tournament variations, but every single one that I made has one of each. So I'm pretty sure I'd make note of that in the video at some point, but hey ho, let's begin. And in case you're wondering why I'm not covering Shang Tsung, Shang Tsung comes out tomorrow, man. You gotta understand, the people who have Shang Tsung early either manipulated their Xboxes, which mainly this is an Xbox thing, to pretend that they moved to New Zealand in order to, you know, get Shang Tsung early, or they actually lived in New Zealand. It releases roughly at midnight on that day, it would seem. So, without further ado, let's get into it!
Kung Lao brings many of his hat tricks to this game, and one of his old ones from MKX is no exception. Orbiting hat. This allows Kung Lao to, well, have a hat that orbits around him. This is useful for all kinds of shenanigans, like going in and comboing, for instance, and protecting him from generally opponents trying to get too close. He can also amplify it to allow 2 hats to strike the opponent, to orbit around him even, so you're not safe from the hat shenanigans. But it does take a little while for the hat to come back, so things like this string become completely unusable. And the uppercut loses its range, and the sweep loses its double hit property. So, you only get the standard sweep and a standard uppercut. He also has, Orbiting Hat, by the way, is a 2-slot ability, and it costs 1 bar of defense and offense to even use, which, as far as I know, is the only move in Mortal Kombat 11 that requires meter to even use. Garrus's Temporal Advantage at one point actually had this requirement as well, but that was pre-launch, and by launch day, that property has been removed. He also gains access to Omega Hat, which is an enhancement of the Orbiting Hat. How does it work? Well, first you have to equip Orbiting Hat, and then equip Omega Hat. And while the hat's out, perform the command again to wickedly increase range. To almost double it. You can see the range here. Now you can see the range here. It also appears to reset the timer that the hat is orbiting, which is probably why it also costs a bar each in order to even utilize, but this also means that outside of infinite meter shenanigans, you cannot amplify Omega Hat. Time to move on to the next round, or variation, I should say. This variation of Kung Lao allows him to utilize the spirit of the great Kung Lao, his ancestor, in Spiritual Guidance. This is a stance that allows him to concentrate, cancel it for 1 defensive bar, and have access to 3 different attacks. First up is Soul Burst, which is a series of rapid soul bursts that sends the opponent full screen. The attack itself doesn't have that kind of range, but it is a very dangerous move to use in order to augment Kung Lao's attacks. These bursts are high, so you have to be wary of that. Upward Soul Burst acts as an anti-air and knocks the opponent high into the air. And only 1 burst will occur at one time, so for a little bit more recovery, you get this absolutely free. A sort of way to get out of there if you accidentally input it or decide that's a mistake, like if the opponent is jumping in. The final move in Spiritual Guidance is Soul Burst from the ground. You have close, mid, far, and very far. You'll notice that even the very far doesn't cover the full screen, so you have to kind of be mindful of how you place your range. If any of Kung Lao's 3 soul attacks land back to back, and then you use the Soul Burst, you got yourself a crushing blow. Now, Kung Lao is known for his teleport shenanigans. He can teleport and enhance and use all kinds of different attacks. But now, with this variation, he has access to air teleport, which allows Kung Lao to, well, teleport from the air or on the ground. This is a single slot and spiritual guidance is 2 slots, so you have to bear that in mind. Time to move on to the next loadout. Man, Kung Lao has a lot of 2-slot abilities. This one is not one of them, but still. This is Guided Hat. It looks like his standard hat toss, but you can alter where it's heading, allowing you to potentially anti-air targets, hit opponents in the legs, and even get easier access to one of his brutalities. You know, the one where he throws his hat and it chops their head off. Now, Buzzsaw Hat is interesting. You can, for a limited amount of time, control where it's going to go, and then have it hold for a little bit of time, allowing you to park it, and then go for combo potential. And yes, you can direct it so that it hits the opponent at close range. This thing is a very active attack. However, it is always a mid, so you must be ready for that. It's also half decent for trying to catch surprise meter burns and such. And you can, of course, not have it hold it, and just toss the hat straight. This is a mid, whereas the normal hat is a high. So, you can keep that in mind. And you even have a little bit of control even if you don't extend it. So you can fake somebody out by altering the hat's trajectory slightly. Or hold it and throw them off that way as well. Time to move on to the next loadout. Kung Lao, I just noticed, has not 1, not 2, but 5 2-slot abilities, meaning that every single custom variation you can build can have 2-slot abilities. And in fact, I had to build each of them with the 2-slot abilities in order to show them all. Anyway, Vortex is the 4th 2-slot ability we're covering. That is still absolutely insane, which allows Kung Lao to leap into the air and send a large tornado. He can delay this move in order to wait for the opponent to come in, but as you can see, the startup is ridiculous. But charging it up also seems to have a side benefit of adding more range, allowing the opponent to get caught full screen, as opposed to having the mid-screen range of the original. Still the same amount of damage, and it launches the opponent into the air. A more flashy way to launch the opponent in the air with Kung Lao's spin. And next we have Z-Hat. This allows Kung Lao to command the hat to fly in a specific direction. It's 2 mids and a low, so the opponent has to bear that in mind. And if you're quick with the cancels, you can actually cancel this move, which is very handy because the startup is a little bit nutso. Time to move on to the final loadout. Whee! Kung Lao's final 2-slot ability is Hat Possession, which allows the hat to orbit around the opponent. If the opponent touches it, they get hit. It does slightly more damage than the orbiting hat, which is a very handy little trick. Ouch, that looked like it hurt. One thing to keep in mind about hat possession is that it says Omega Hat says that you can equip it with hat possession, but you actually can't because it conflicts with this move. So Omega Hat cannot be equipped with hat possession despite the text actually saying so. They might need to fix that in one way or another. Now, the final ability we're covering today is Possessed Hat. I'm not altering the flight path. This is actually how Kung Lao's hat flies now. It's a mid, it does slightly more damage, but there are some situations where it can actually duck. Like at the apex of the wave, where the hat becomes a high, and then it becomes a mid, and over again. See? He was standing there, and this move actually missed. But it doesn't happen all the time. You can't really zone with this hat. You can hit him sometimes at this range, but not at all times, which is very interesting indeed. Finally, we're going to look at Kung Lao's Fatal Blow, and then frame data. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm getting all kinds of tongue-tied today. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. And as always, don't forget to be awesome. Hats off to you, Kung Lao. Okay, this is a quick interjection before the frame data, because guess who completely forgot to do the tournament variations? I did. So Lotus Fist gives Kung Lao orbiting an Omega hat. So it turns out that the variation 1 that I created, or that I, quote, created, was actually just the default variation. Whoops, that's good to know. Next variation, let's go! This Hat Tricks variation of Kung Lao has 3 abilities, which means all of these are single slot. You have Guided Hat, Z-Hat, and Air Teleport. This seems to be the better overall variation of Kung Lao, but I don't play the character, so I can't say for sure. Back to the frame data. Did I? I totally did too. One thing I completely forgot to make mention of is that this attack amplifies as well. Although I'm not quite sure what the benefit is. It looks like it just does the same amount of damage. But it says there's an amplify, but excuse me. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. Oh, you can amplify it in order to reduce recovery. I gotcha. The more you know. I really should have noted that. Oh well. How was that?